My name is Amelia Decker. I'm a carrier of MECP2 duplication syndrome. It's an X-linked disorder. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and I'm actually a general pediatrician here too. Our son was diagnosed with MECP2 duplication syndrome. So because it's an X-linked disorder, they recommended that I be tested for it. Only about 12% of kids have random mutations with that disease. And my husband and I wanted to have more children. So we really needed to know whether or not I was a carrier. So our road to testing me for carrier status was really easy compared to a lot of women. My gynecologist was more than happy to test me for it. A lot of people get referred to a geneticist or a genetic counselor first, but she didn't ask me to do that. And we just did it through, I think, LabCorp, which again is not the same for everybody. You know, there's a guilt factor, which we all know logically we shouldn't have, right? That we were a carrier and gave it to our child. And maybe we should have known or sensed somehow that we had this. So there's that, which is not logical, I know. But then also it meant that we were going to really have to think about options for fertility, for going on to have more family. We planned on having 2 to 4 kids, and our very first child was affected. So it was really devastating to find out I was a carrier. It is a spectrum of a phenotype. It's generally characterized by low muscle tone. They're not very strong. About 2/3 end up developing epilepsy, so seizures, and it's very difficult to control this type of epilepsy. They can have a whole host of other things. Some of the surrounding genes that can be duplicated can cause problems with immune function, and then also a lot of GI stuff like reflux and constipation are really common. What we realize, though, especially being involved in our community, is that there is a spectrum. Some kids are in the neonatal ICU, and other kids are like ours, where we didn't really realize something was wrong until about 12 months. It's pretty rare also to have a female affected by MECP2 duplication syndrome. Because it's on the X chromosome, girls generally can have X inactivation and are just carriers. Now, carriers do have some phenotype. They have some expression of the disease, but mostly it's boys that are affected unless there's some skewed X inactivation, and a girl is affected. Also, if there's a triplication of the gene, instead of just 2, they have 3, then a girl will be affected as well, and it'll generally be pretty severe. So we went to go meet with a reproductive specialist right after I got my carrier status. And, you know, I'm in medicine, so I had a good idea of what my options were. I had actually called around to a couple different companies to see if there were any non-invasive prenatal testing available, if there was non-invasive prenatal testing available for MECP2 duplication syndrome. You know, that's where they do mom's blood, and then they look for fetal cells and try to check the DNA of an existing pregnancy. And it was too big of a, I think it was too big of a duplication for them to pick up in the current technology that they have with NIPT, the non-invasive prenatal testing. So my husband and I realized it was either we don't have more kids, we adopt, or we do IVF with pre-implantation testing. We decided to do IVF with pre-implantation testing because we felt like it was our only option. You know, we're both perfectly healthy and don't have fertility issues, so we didn't feel like we needed to go down the adoption route, and we wanted more children, both for us and also for our son and for our family. We felt like we wanted more kids to be part of it, and you know, it was pretty much what we felt like was our only option. To us, sort of playing the odds and just going for it without any sort of testing was not an option. You know, we don't think we could handle it as parents. It's really emotional to have a child with a lot of need and disability, and our child's really pretty healthy on the spectrum of things for his disease. We couldn't imagine if we ended up having a child that, died young. About 50% of children with this disease die before the age of 25. So it's definitely got a shortened lifespan. So it was not an option for us to play the odds and have another child, knowing that we had a 1 in 4 chance that we had an affected boy. We have a 1 in 4 chance of having a carrier girl. And then again, what if she was one of those rare cases where carrier girls were actually affected pretty severely? We just couldn't take that chance. We thought that you do PGD and you're guaranteed that this is fine and you've done your due diligence and your child will not be affected. But we had a successful implantation the second time around. We had 1 failed transfer and then the second one was fine. And that's when the fertility specialist said, okay, so now you're going to do confirmatory testing, right? And we both went, what? We have to do something else? He was under the impression that there was non-invasive prenatal testing, which is just getting blood from mom's arm. So again, I made some more phone calls, and yep, everyone, I talked to one of the genetic counselors for a couple of the NIPT companies, and she said, no, I don't know of anybody that possesses any technology to look for a duplication that big. If you need confirmatory testing, you're going to have to do chorionic villus sampling, CVS, or amniocentesis. So, so we went and met with a genetic counselor at our local big hospital, so our tertiary center, who they do all the amniocentesis. We had decided personally not to do chorionic villus sampling. That's earlier, so if you choose to terminate, it's earlier in your pregnancy, but it's also higher risk to the baby. So we chose to go ahead and do, to look into amniocentesis. And we went and chatted with the genetic counselor at the hospital, and she explained that the stated chance of miscarriage is 1 in 300, but that their facilities is 1 in 1,000. So when we thought about my mental health, thinking about carrying a baby, not knowing if he could have a 2% chance of having MACP2 duplication syndrome again, because it was a male. We knew it was a male embryo because we knew we had a male embryo implanted. That was part of the genetic testing that they did. They will tell you your sex chromosomes. We knew we still had a 2% chance of it being wrong, and actually that he had MACP2 duplication syndrome. And I actually had another mom tell me one time, like she was so worried about that small margin of error that they would only ever implant females because she was just too nervous. So, our local hospital, which is a big tertiary center, said that their rate of miscarriage was about 1 in 1,000. So we really struggled with that. Do we need to know? Do we need confirmation? And I just decided it's a very personal decision for everybody, but I decided I needed it, and that the risk of complication with the amniocentesis was lower than, the risk of false negative on the testing. So we went for it and everything was fine. It was scary. It's a little nerve-wracking, the actual process, but especially because our journey was during COVID, which meant I couldn't have anybody in the room with me. Honestly, there's nothing I would really change about our experience. I feel like we did everything we needed to do, and we had a wonderful doctor, and I actually had a friend going through IVF at the same time, and it was really nice to have someone, honestly, just to vent to about how crummy sometimes you feel during IVF and how scary it is and how many shots you got to do. But honestly, that sounds daunting, and it is daunting. It's not easy, but I'm really thankful we did it, and that we have a healthy baby to share our son's life and share our lives with, and we'll do it again probably. We have more embryos, so. I'm very thankful. My husband and I actually, our family, we started a foundation, a family support foundation for MACP2 duplication syndrome, because we felt like we were well equipped to do it. There were no new diagnosis resources for families when we were diagnosed. We essentially got sorry to hear that email, and a couple of pre-printed articles about what it was, and we just thought this isn't acceptable. There needs to be family support.